The Notorious GPT, Science Communication in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. That is an article published on May 2nd, 2023 by Mike Schäfer, Professor of Science Communication at the University of Zurich. Professor Schäfer, welcome to SciTV.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I just read your article and I knew immediately I had to have you on here so we can try to digest a little bit of your thinking around this topic. And in the article, you point blank just stated that this topic on science communication and AI has largely been neglected so far. Tell us more why that is.
I mean, it's on the one hand, I think it has been neglected to a surprising degree, given that science communication research especially, is a field where we are concerning ourselves with how certain scientific fields develop, and artificial intelligence and progress in that field in its various forms is one of the most important and most timely scientific developments. And we have to take this up quickly, I think. And it's not that there is nothing out there in terms of research on that, but it's very spotty and it's like an atoll. There's various islands of research that we have, and they're usually small. And given the importance of the technology, which is, I think, a game changer for many fields and will be a game changer for many aspects of science communication as well, we have to remedy that quickly, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of room in this space, right? It's moving so quickly. Is it the case that researchers are just trying to catch up, right? The work that is being done, and does this lag in between here? Is that what you think is happening, or is there something else?
I think the field has proven during the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, that the field is able to quickly adapt to upcoming issues and to treat them with the thorough analysis that is necessary. And I have no doubt, given the prominence of ChatGPT and generative AI more generally, that the field will do so as well here. And you're perfectly right. There's a lot of room in this space. You can do research on, well, how do users actually interact with ChatGPT? In what aspects of science communication can we maybe make use of the opportunities that we have here to better provide individual users, but also intermediaries such as science journalists, for example, with better information using the technology? But on the other hand, also, well, what are the challenges maybe that we have to deal with here in terms of accuracy is something that is often discussed in terms of ChatGPT and generative AI, or in terms of the underlying biases of training data that we can only guess at to some degree because we don't know the specifics of this proprietary training data. So we can't really judge that. So there's a lot of questions that are in there and that need to be tackled. And I'm actually also looking forward to doing part of that myself, but also engaging conversations with colleagues that will be necessary, but also very inspiring. It's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, I think the questions, as you mentioned, and in your paper, you go through these questions and try to expand on them. And so for those who are watching this, you should click down below, read the paper and Professor Schäfer's insight. As you mentioned, how people interact with generative AI, how it responds. One of the questions I really liked, and in my lab, we look at things at the ecosystem level quite a bit. You mentioned that researchers should analyze how, really, what is the impact of generative AI on the whole ecosystem, right, of science communication broadly. Can we unpack that a little bit here? How do you see ChatGPT and other generative AI tools impacting science communication?
If you look at the ecosystem level, so at the general level, there's many aspects to unpack here, but just to mention a few. One is that we are in a situation where, quote unquote, traditional intermediaries of science communication, like journalists, for example, have been operating under more and more challenging conditions in recent years in many media and in many countries. You have an economic crisis of journalism, you have ad revenue going down, you have subscription numbers going down, you have in many instances you have fewer resources available to do science journalism, to do good science journalism. There's fewer people, there's beats and desks that have been closed down. And at the same time, there's a lot of information to go through and to work with. And that's challenging. And in many countries, that also applies to a degree to institutions of higher education, universities, scientific institutions, etc., that also have to deal with scarcer resources than they had before, which results in a situation where the question is, well, these challenges, what does ChatGPT actually mean for these challenges? There's pure money to go around, and ChatGPT is a technology that for jobs, for example, that are largely text-based, where first estimates are between, 15, 20, all the way up to 65, 70% of these jobs or of these tasks actually may be replaceable by artificial intelligence. And that's very rough, and as you see, widely varying numbers.
Right.
But there can be a challenge there in terms of job implications. On the other hand, also, if you look at the audience, the ecosystem question in terms of the audience, we have to look at, are there new digital or AI-related divides emerging here? Could it be that we get to a point, a lot of the generative AI technologies are being monetized now, that we get to a point where not everybody can actually use the technologies because they get too expensive, and or apart from this mere access to generative AI, where some people are better able to actually make use to them, so that they are probably better educated people, for example, that may be able to use these technologies more fruitfully, thus widening the gaps in knowledge about scientific issues to other segments of the population. And there's other elements, of course, as well, but these are probably arguably two of the most pressing, I think.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect you mentioned, job implications, right? ChatGPT is going to only get better and better. You mentioned in your article multimodal capacity, right? It's doing text right now, but soon enough we'll be able to do basically all of it, right? And so
absolutely,
the implication for those who are doing science communication, what does this mean? Should they be packing their bags and moving on? Or is this an opportunity here? Are there opportunities that should explore and utilize?
There are a lot of opportunities. And we are right now absolutely at the stage where it needs human supervision, and it needs the human factor still. And I'm not sure that will ever change entirely. I don't think it will make science communicators superfluous by any means. It may change a lot of how they do their job and how they can do their job. It may make certain aspects easier. It makes certain aspects that they're currently doing also, it may be able to replace certain aspects that they're currently doing. So what a lot of people are discussing when it comes to science communication and generative AI is, in terms of finding stories, getting ideas, trying out different frames, trying out different headlines if you're writing a text or something like that. There, it's going to be a big help, of course. The whole multimodal turn that is coming, visual ChatGPT has already been announced and is coming. And if you're a bit more savvy, you can actually already do that. You can already blend ChatGPT or other GPT tools into other AI tools that you have and generate multimodal replies, spoken language, infographics, etc., all the way to games if you want. And by now you need to be more savvy to do that. That will get easier, that will get more available to more people. That will also be blended in more easily into existing software environments like operating systems, search engines, etc., already happen in many places. So that's going to happen, and there is a lot of opportunity here for science communicators. Doesn't mean that there aren't also substantial challenges, but there are a lot of opportunities, yes.
Yeah, I think you have to look at both sides of the equation, right? What are the challenges, what are the opportunities? And I'm thinking, for example, like for public engagement, really training the publics, right? Sort of how I can imagine seeing you programming around helping publics utilize such tools, right? Around navigating misinformation and all the other not fun stuff that is out there as well. So what is your general advice? So yeah, we kind of shared this a little bit, but the general advice for the science practitioners out there, right? Who now they don't have the publication. You were calling for more work to be done in this space, right? They don't have the insights yet. The insights are coming, I suspect.
The insights are coming. I think the first thing is do play around with this stuff. Mm-hmm. Very, very important. It's on the one hand, many more generative AI tools are coming almost every day, certainly every week. There's already a lot out there. Familiarize yourself with that, play around with that. It's not only that many more things are coming that provide new options, that provide new modalities, etc. It's also that you or we as science communicators, we need new skills like prompting literacy, if you like, the ability to prompt these tools in a way that allows you to make the most optimal use of them. That is something people need to learn. Not only we, a lot of people in society will need to learn that, but we also need to learn this ourselves. So do play around with it. That's important. At the same time, remain and see, of course, where can it be useful? How can it be useful, etc., etc. At the same time, at the stage we are in right now, and that's been discussed widely, the tools have a lot of limitations that still exist and that are particularly important, maybe even for science communication. So, I mean, based on training data, they approximate their answers. So they do something that they approximate to the training data that they've seen. And this, especially early on, also applied to things that are quite important in science communication, like numbers, like certain factual statements, like sources and references.
Right.
And that's a huge challenge, of course, because that's the bread and butter that has to be gotten correct in science communication. So this is something that needs to be checked. Figure out, where does it work? Where doesn't it work? Where does it need the human factor? And in many instances, it does need the human factor. But if things go well, there is tantalizing potential here. I mean, participation, engagement, dialogical science communication, something that we've all been striving to do more in recent years, and where there's many great examples, of course, to do that. But it always also had challenges. To scale this up has always been a challenge in many contexts. And generative AI in general has the potential to provide dialogical science communication at scale. And that is tantalizing, with many challenges, of course. But try to see where this is going. That's going to be interesting. And maybe also try to see, well, can we actually move this technology in a direction where it's actually, where it has the most use for us? That's also an interesting question.
Yeah. So play with this, right? Don't sit on the sidelines. You're saying actually get in there, try to understand the technology, the limitations. And you're right, the limitations are there, right? It's not a perfect thing, but it's only going to get better. Right. And then understanding what those are. So I think a lot of opportunity there from what I'm hearing, if I'm correct on that front.
Absolutely. Keep in mind that how technologies develop is not just naturally given. We can influence how technologies develop by how we use them, by how we engage with them. Maybe even by how we try to bring together capacities, institutions, universities, etc. If we think it's problematic that many aspects of the generative AI technologies that we have now are proprietary, there is a world in which universities get together and try to develop their own open access tools where we actually know, well, what has been the training data, what were the inherent biases there that are always there when it comes to this, to large language models and other technologies, and that we can use in other ways and with more clarity and with more certainty about what's actually going on. That's an opportunity that exists for all of us, but that necessitates that we actually do these things together.
Yeah, and I think so. The key word there you mentioned earlier, things going at scale, right? The dialogic, the dual engagement. What would you say to people who push back a little bit and say, well, everything at scale, then, right? Both the good and the bad, essentially, right? Going double up on there.
Absolutely.
What would you say to that?
Absolutely, that's the challenge, and we have to see in which way the pendulum swings. There are people, and with good arguments and good reason, that say, well, the challenge is that we'll get misinformation at scale. We'll get wrongness at scale. We'll get an AI-driven infodemic here, where this misinformation is produced at scale, and where even in the future, the training data that future large language models will be using uses this misinformation data, so the knowledge pool that we have will get polluted more and more and more, or will get watered down, if you like, more and more. We have to see where that goes. Again, we can play a role in that also, but we really have to see where this goes. And there are absolutely concerns as well. Yes.
Yeah. I think no sitting by the sidelines. I think we need to be in this equation. I anticipate to see more conversations at conferences, I guess, PCST, Science Talk, AAAS in the coming years. I've already seen some workshops around this already, right? And I think even around the issues of training, right? How do you now incorporate this, as you mentioned, prompt literacy, right? I like the way you put that, prompt engineering, prompt literacy within science communication, right?
Absolutely.
For those who are delivering it, and I think even on the other side, on the publics that are consuming, how to engage, right, on that front.
We have to play a role there. I personally think this is a game changer. This is not going away. If we don't engage with it, others will, and maybe not in ways that we are all comfortable with. So we have to be in this domain, and we have to play a role there.
Professor Schäfer, this was great. We need to have you back. Clearly, things are moving at rapid pace, and this is the first conversation, I hope, among many. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and we look to having you back very soon.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.